Alright everybody, today's lesson is on the distributive property. So we just spent some time learning about the commutative property and the associative property, the identity properties. Now we got an important one here that's called the distributive property. And basically what I want you to consider here as we start is I want us to look at this problem. Or if I took 5 and then times in parentheses 6 plus 2. And I'm pretty positive that everybody in class can solve this. And if I asked you to do this, I'm positive that every one of you would solve it this way. You would take the 6 plus 2 because it's in parentheses and get 8. And then because we still have that 5 out in front, now we do 5 times 8 and get 40. Alright, and if I saw that problem on homework, or if I saw it on a test, that's exactly how I'd do it. That's how I expect that you guys would do it. But what I want you to consider is this. Okay, I'm going to write down the same problem again, which is 5 and then in parentheses 6 plus 2. And what the distributive property tells us is that there's another way to solve this. Alright, and basically, since this 5 is out front and it's saying that it's being multiplied by everything that's inside the parentheses, well, that's exactly what the distributive property does. It says to take this 5 and to multiply by each thing on the inside. So if I take 5 times that 6, okay, I can do that. But then I also have to take 5 times this 2 as well. So you're taking 5 times each thing that's inside the parentheses. And then because there was an addition between there, there's got to be an addition left here as well. Okay, and then if we were to solve this, well, I know 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 2 is 10. And then the 30 plus 10 equals 40. And what you can see here is that either method that we do it, we get the same answer. And I probably know what you're thinking is, well, that's fine and dandy that you can do it that way, but this first way seems a lot easier. Why wouldn't I just do it that way? Well, like I said, the method that's in blue here, if I saw that problem at any time, I would solve it just like the method in blue. But the distributive property, and I'll show you a little bit more in a second here, there is another way to do it, and we just got to keep in mind that that is an option. Okay, so let's get down the official rule here for the distributive property. And I've got two of them here, just basically because one that deals with an addition and one that deals with a subtraction. So really both the same thing. What it's saying is because this 4 is out in front, it has to be multiplied by everything that's inside the parentheses. So that means we have to do 4 times the 6, and we're going to do 4 times the 3. And all the distributive property does is simply write that down. So I'm taking 4 times the 6, and then it's a plus because that plus is in the middle, and then we're going to do 4 times the 3. Okay? Now I could go ahead and solve that if I wanted. I could do 4 times 6 is 24, 4 times 3 is 12, and then add the 24 plus the 12 to get 36. But I don't even need to do that. I just want to show you this is what the rule is. You're simply taking the 4 times both thing that's in the parentheses. Now down on the bottom one where it's 5 times in parentheses 7 minus 2, again exactly the same thing, except for instead of that plus being in the middle, you're going to end up having a minus that's in the middle. So we end up getting a 5 times 7, and I can write that down. And then since the subtraction is in the middle, it's going to be a subtraction in the middle over here. Then I also have to do the 5 times the 2, and that's what the distributive property is. Okay. Now, where are we actually going to use this mostly? Okay, well, again, because if these were the problems, I wouldn't expect you to do it that way. But what you're going to start seeing in our upcoming lessons is, well, what if we have a variable in there? What if it's something like this? 4 times x plus 2 this way. Now, this is where the distributive property is going to be huge for us, because we're going to see this a lot this year, and the further we get into more algebra, you're going to see this quite often. Anytime you see a group of parentheses like this with a number like 4 hanging out front of it, you got to be thinking the first thing I have to do is get rid of those parentheses. Well, in this case, the x plus 2 here, I can't get rid of it because I don't know what x is. Unless I went ahead and told all you guys what x was, then I could add it together. But because I'm not telling you what x is, I can't do x plus 2. So basically, this is when the distributive property is going to come in. I want to simplify this because I want the parentheses to go away. So we do exactly what we said we were going to do when we did the problems in red there. I'm going to take the 4 that's out front times each of the things inside the parentheses. Okay? Now, when I do 4 times x, again, I don't know what x is. Another way to write 4x is just to squish those two things together there. I can't actually multiply them because I don't know what x is, so I have to leave it as 4x. And then the last part here, if I do 4 times 2, I'm just going to go ahead and do 4 times 2 right away, which gives me 8. And again here, this plus is in between, and this is as far as I can go here. That's going to be my final answer, 4x plus 8. Because I can't actually go any further unless I told you what x is. Now, if I told you something like x equals 10, well, yeah, then we could do a lot more because 10 could go in place of the x. We'd do 4 times 10 is 40, and then 40 plus the 8 would be 48. However, in this problem, I didn't tell us that, so we can't take that step. We go as far as we can, which is 4x plus 8, and there's going to be a lot of times in math this year that you go as far as you can, and you might end up with a goofy-looking answer like this, 4x plus 8. You might not get a perfect whole number, like 14. You're just not going to happen all the time. All right, so that's all we're doing for the distributive property. Okay, guys, here's 2 for you to do. Example 1, use the distributive property to write an equivalent expression. So again, you're going to use the distributive property just like we showed on the previous page, and you're just going to go as far as you can. You might not get an exact final answer. Just go as far as you can. So pause the video, give it a try. Okay, we should be back, everybody. So compare your answer to mine. For part A here, I see the 3, then inside the parentheses, the x plus 7. So just like we said on the other page, that means that we have to take 3 times both of these things that are on the inside. So that means 3 times the x, which I just write as 3x. Then when I do 3 times the 7, well, I know 3 times 7 is 21. This is as far as I can go, because what we're going to learn here when we talk about combining like terms in another lesson is that because that has an x, this does not have an x, I cannot combine those things. I cannot do this and say 24x, okay? That is not allowed. So I'm going to get rid of that altogether. So we're not even looking at it. Basically, when we get to this point, we cannot combine those two things. That's as far as we can go. That's the end of the distributive property. Okay, for part B, it's really the same thing, except the number in this case, the solo number, isn't written in front. Now, if I had written it in front like this, it'd be just like all the other ones. It's no different if it's in back of the thing right here. I'm still taking it -2 times both things that are on the inside. So I take the -2 times n, okay? I take the -2 times 4, which ends up being a -8. And then because there's plus sign was in the middle, I can put a plus sign in there. So my final answer, -2n plus a -8. And that's as far as I go. Again, because this first one here has an n, the second one does not. I cannot combine those two things. So there's my final answer, -2n plus -8. Okay? Again, if you have questions, make sure you stop me, and let's get this straightened out. Last one for you guys. So these are problems that I really like here. Find the area of a rectangle. So what we're trying to find here with area is really, how much space is inside this object. That's what area is. How many square units does it take to cover that thing? Okay? Well, one thing that we should know is if we're doing area, really all we need to do is take length times width. That's what area means. Area equals taking the length of an object times the width of an object, and that's how you find it. So when I see these two things here, I see the 2x plus 5, I'm going to put a parenthesis around that because that whole thing is the length. And what I know I have to do is take that and multiply it by the width, which is 7, and it doesn't matter if I write 2x plus 5 and then the 7 on the outside behind it. What I'm going to do is just switch them around here. I'm going to put the 7 in front, and that's going to be multiplied by the 2x plus 5. And what you'll see here is just like we did, on the last page, is we have a distributive property that we need to solve. So I have to take 7 times that 2x plus 5. So we go ahead and do that. If I do 7 times 2x, well, really what we're doing is we're multiplying the number. So 7 times 2 is 14. This x here just kind of comes along for the ride. So that becomes 14x. I do the 7 times the 5, which is 35. And since that's a plus in the middle here, that means that there has to be a plus down here. And anytime that we're talking about area here, I'm going to circle that. Anytime our question says find the area, this is one of the subjects that I'm going to be very picky on your label, because you have to know area is the number of square units it takes to cover an object. So in this case, since I didn't tell you this rectangle was being measured in centimeters or feet or millimeters, what I have to know is that even though I didn't say any of those things, then we just say, well, I know it was measured in some type of units, I just don't know what units they are. So when I write my answer here, area is always measured in square units. So I say units, and then the little square goes on the label alone. It's always on the label, nothing else. So my final answer here is 14x plus 35 square units. And that's it. That's the end of the lesson.